Welcome back again to the Imaginary Gallery. It's TJ, the host, your host, and I've got tonight's topic again from this same book, Snakes in Suits, Paul Babiak, Robert Hare, both PhDs. And I just was reading it, and the book itself is called When Psychopaths Go To Work, but the gem of this is it's not only about the workplace. I mean, this particular section I'm about to cover is, I think, very beneficial, especially if you've dealt with not only a psychopath, but basically any one of the cluster B monsters, because this sums them up. And it helps put things into perspective if you've had the misfortune of having to deal with such a creature in your life. But reading this, it's kind of funny. When I read it first, it's like I've said all this stuff before. It's like someone else is taking my words. And I suppose it's a universal knowledge in some circles. But I'll use their words and mine together. Personality, the three faces of you. And the authors tell us that many books have been written about personality and the complex ways in which it influences our interactions with others. And there are all kinds of theories about how a personality develops and how it differs from one person to another, and how it reveals itself in one's behavior. There are three common ways that each person's personality can be experienced. All of them are relevant to understanding manipulation, because many cluster Bs are astute students of human nature and, unlike most people, are willing to use what they've learned for their own selfish purposes. They may not have the textbook learning experience about personality theory, but they have an intuitive feel that they put to good use. They use their knowledge of personality to control your view of them and ultimately to control you. To recognize how these creatures control the opinions that others have of them, it's very important to understand the differences among 3 points of view. First, there's the internal or private personality. That's the me that we experience inside of ourselves. Second, there is the projected or public personality, sometimes called the persona. It's the me that we want others to see, the self that we present to others when we are in public. And the third would be the attributed personality or reputation, the view based on what we do and say that others form of our personality. And that's the one these monsters have no control over. But our private or inner personality is complex, and it's made up of our thoughts, perceptions, judgments, attitudes, drives, needs, preferences, values, emotions, and so on. And our private self also includes products of our imagination, including fantasies, hopes, ambitions, all of which are idealized visions of who we are and who we want to be. In many people, the private self consists of positive traits and characteristics, and we believe that these positive self-perceptions represent who we really are. We want others to appreciate these traits and can get very upset if somebody suggests that they're not true. For example, if you believe that you are a loyal, compassionate person, then you would be concerned by anything that someone said about you that suggested otherwise. Our private self also includes personal characteristics we do not like. Typically, we do not want others to see these parts. While we may try to improve on some of these characteristics, we would sometimes just prefer to ignore some of them altogether. These unpleasant or darker traits include harmful things we have done or do to people, illicit or violent thoughts and fantasies that we have, and our general insecurity, greed, and illusions about ourselves and our place in this world. Now, getting angry and losing control, being excessively rude or annoying to others, acting coarsely to those around us, and being depressed or despondent are examples of things we might do that reflect the darkest, yet they're saying normal, side of our personality. During a typical day, we spend quite a lot of mental and emotional energy building up and enhancing the positive or bright side of our private self and minimizing or controlling the dark side. In fact, to preserve our internal emotional balance and to avoid excessive anxiety, we need to believe that our positive self-evaluations are accurate, and we will put forth a lot of energy to fight any doubts that may arise. Now, the goal for much of the therapy, coaching, and counseling that people seek is to resolve the internal psychological conflicts between the bright side and the dark side of our personalities. Well-developed and researched psychological tests can help shed light on our hidden traits. A competent mental health professional can facilitate exploring these parts of the psyche while providing insights that help us integrate the parts into a unified whole. As long as our self-image is mainly positive and we can accept the less positive side of ourselves as a normal part of being a human, we will value our individual self and conclude that we are okay people. Feeling all right about oneself comes across as self-confidence and inner strength, two traits that are valued in our society. Now, your public self or persona, on the other hand, is how you want those around to see you. Your persona is a subset of your private self, yet a very carefully edited version, to be sure, of your private personality that you reveal to others in order to influence how they see and judge you. Anyone who's ever tried to make a positive impression on another, maybe on a date or during a job interview, will understand how difficult it can be to maximize your positives and minimize the negatives of your personality. Despite our best efforts to control what we reveal to others, we do unintentionally reveal private personality traits to others on occasion, but overall our persona reflects the personality we want others to see. This brings us to the third view of personality, how others view and describe us. This is the reputation others assign to us based on what they see, hear, and experience when interacting with us. Unfortunately, despite our best efforts to present a positive persona, people many times will form their own opinions, both correct and mistaken, based on what we do, how we look, the clothes we choose to wear, and whether they agree with our values and beliefs as filtered through their own biases, stereotypes, likes, and dislikes. The filters other people use to evaluate us can, to varying degrees, distort the picture folks get of who we really are. The problem is that all of us form first impressions of others very quickly. Perhaps during the very first few seconds of meeting someone new. Once formed, people solidify their first impressions by filtering out new information that contradicts their early impressions and preferentially let in information that is supportive. The people we like right off become even more likable, and those we don't care for remain so. For example, you may feel an affinity for those with a similar religion or a political party and generalize this to other aspects of their makeup. Feeling affinity for someone makes us more accepting of the things we like about him or her and far more forgiving of those things that we may dislike. Consistency between a person's words and deeds also plays a major important role in reinforcing his or her reputation. Consistency leads us to see other people as honest, even if we don't totally agree with their views, while inconsistencies we notice may leave us wondering about them. All of these filtered perceptions can cause problems, of course, if we misjudge the persona of a person when forming first impressions. Narcopath. To summarize the model of personality so far, they're stating we've got the private self made up of positive traits that we value and want others to appreciate, and a collection of negative traits that we want to hide. When we interact with others, we present a carefully crafted persona or public self comprised of a selection of characteristics and traits from our private self that we want others to see. Sometimes we could exaggerate a few of our positives just to make a good impression, give an influence on others. Occasionally, material from your private, dark side slips into public view without you being aware. At other times, we may be aware of the traits that slip through and feel embarrassed or guilty. And finally, our reputation is the personality by which others come to know us. Ideally, our reputation accurately reflects the psychological traits we want to show, but in fact, observers filter what we present through their personal biases, prejudices, and preconceptions. This may cause them to form an incorrect impression of our personality. Your reputation may not coincide with the public self you are trying to project, or the internal personality you personally experience. In an ideal world, all three views of the personality would line up. We'd be happy with our private self, feel comfortable revealing it through our persona, and feel safe in the knowledge that those with whom we interact come to know us for who we truly are. But the world is not such a perfect place, and people are not perfect beings. The best we can hope for is, in most social situations, is that our persona reflects the things we want to share with others, and that observers are open-minded enough that their attributions about us and our resulting reputations are accurate. Sales representatives, human resource staff, and other professionals who spend a lot of time interacting with people do become good at judging traits and characteristics. Psychologists and psychiatrists, of course, are trained in doing personality assessments and can usually see a bit more of the underlying personality dynamics. So do poker players looking for tells leaked by other players. But, to their credit, psychopaths and other cluster B monster manipulators have the deserved reputation of being good judges of the personalities of others, perhaps because they work really hard at it and have the uncanny ability to project the most effective persona, depending on the situation, to get what they want. How do they do it? Well, to psychopaths, your face, your words, and body language are your autobiography, printed in large type. Now, there is one excerpt in this particular section which I thought I'd share because it kind of illustrates a yucky picture of these types of people in action. And it is entitled, Using What You Have. The warning here is, if they happen to be intelligent, well-bred, and physically attractive, psychopaths and other cluster Bs can have a devastating impact on the people they meet. Really? For example, they give you a story of Caroline, who's a very attractive and intelligent 30-year-old British woman. Her daddy was a barrister and her mama a successful stage actress. Caroline went to several of the best schools, but seldom stayed at any of them for very long. She got into some minor difficulties on occasion. For example, she was unable to account for some missing money during her volunteer work at a charitable organization, but was always bailed out by her parents. She moved in fashionable circles, and she had many brief affairs. For many years, Caroline was involved with a pseudo-religious cult, and her direct line to the saints helped her manipulate elderly people into buying their own little piece of heaven. Later, she met an international smuggler, and this led to her first prison term, a 3-year sentence for diamond smuggling. Now, she's a delightful conversationist, exuding an engaging charm and wit that keeps you captivated for hours. Her description of her current circumstances and the events that led up to it have almost a romantic quality. Caroline likes the fast life and loves excitement. For the past 4 years, she's been combining those interests as a diamond smuggler, making regular runs between one place in New York, Tel Aviv, Amsterdam, packing thousands of dollars worth of diamonds on each trip. Caroline's unusual occupation, simply the latest in a long string of successful scams and cons, rewards her in 2 ways. Number 1, provides her with a substantial income to support her lavish lifestyle. And the second, and simultaneously, would be a constant source of excitement, because these people, they have very low levels of arousal, and they have to do stuff like this. We'll illustrate a little bit more in a second. But they can't just be happy waking up and looking at the sunset and feeling, oh, what a beautiful day. No, they've got to con and swindle somebody and get away with it, and then they'll feel something. Caroline stated that walking through an airport with thousands of dollars worth of smuggled diamonds was a tremendous thrill. See? It's an incomparable rush. Now, when she was first caught by a married customs agent, she was able to convince him to not turn her in, and she, of course, had an affair with him. Later, she turned him in, though, as a part of a plea bargain, when she was caught a second time. Although he lost his family, job, and reputation, she was unmoved. He had a good time, and now the party's over. That's how she felt about it. Her only regret was that her days as a runner were probably over, Now that Interpol knew about her, she had vague plans to become a stockbroker or real estate agent. Meanwhile, she was working on a scheme to be deported in hopes that it will lead to a reduced sentence. In a letter to a British official about this matter, Caroline suggested that his wife or girlfriend might like a little sparkling something on her finger and that she could easily arrange for this to happen. See, these people are sick. They want what they want. They'll say what they need to say to get it. But I just figured this section was valuable no matter whether it's workplace or personal or date or whatever. It's very interesting about the personality, the three faces, because the problem with these cluster B monsters is I covered in a different video on impression management. They try to manage the impression you have of them, and what's interesting that ties into this is the third part, where it's the reputation, where they can say and do and whatever act however they want, but if the other person has their own perceptions, they can't control that. Now they can try, they can keep being consistently a certain way, but they cannot control those of us who form our opinions based on our observations and experience and intuition. And they do desperately try. Some of them are not as successful as others, and I've had the opportunity to witness varying levels of competency as far as psychopathic behavior goes. But that's for another time. Have a great evening and stay strong.
For the first obvious question I'm sure you probably have is, why did I target you?
If you remember the first night we met, I was trying to flee from an abusive ex. Remember? You bought it, didn't you? Well, the truth was, remember? When I told you about how abusive he was and the things he did to me? And remember how I told you he was a loser? He didn't even have a job? Well, that played a part in why I targeted you. Which, of course, I would never have told you at the time. Instead, I translated that into, oh, I love your eyes. Oh, you have such a beautiful smile. Oh, you're so entertaining, and so on. And you were pulled in by that spell, which was magic, and obviously it worked, until at least I was through with you. But I asked you questions here and there, which told me that you were employed, and you were employed full-time. And quite frankly, my abusive boyfriend and I actually hadn't broken up yet. I was just scouting out new recruits before I made the move, and I just tell people that story, and hope one comes along who does have a job, and who will be able to support my needs. So that was the first part of why I targeted you. Well, because you had a job, and I tried not to ask directly, but I listened, and I heard, and you had a job, so you were prime target.
My usual technique works pretty much every time, which is, as I mentioned, I'm pretty quiet. I don't say much. Like on a first date, if you want the truth, I've gone on first dates where I didn't only make love to the date, but I made love to the date's roommate and the roommate's father. So if that gives you an idea of the fact I don't have the normal boundaries, but I couldn't dare expect to go on a first date with you and say, hey baby, is your roommate's father available and him too? That wouldn't go over so well because I know I'm a unique person. Not many people have my gifts and abilities, so just so you know, the first date I was up for anything, even pregnancy, unprotected, but I've learned through my experience not to say too much, so I let you lead the way. So some of my dates I've gone out with, and when it gets a little bit late, they say, well, I don't spend the night with my date, so you're going to have to leave. And I'd be like, really? I don't spend the night with my first dates either. I think we have something in common. And again, it's a total fake, because if he and his roommate would have given me the green light, and the father, I'd have been on top of them like white on rice. But I have to play it cool on my first date. So I just went right along with your lead. Oh dear, I don't spend the night with my first date either. I'm so glad someone else has morals in this world. And that helped to hook you in, didn't it? Admit it, didn't it?